up to you. Okay. So let me see if I can remember how to share my screen here.
There's a button on the bar.
Yeah, I see it. All right. Let me just bring up my presentation, because obviously I'm an expert in all technology, so this is going to be completely easy.
Neil, did you send the link to Alex?
I did.
Okay, because I was wondering how he hacked in.
He's an
All right, can you see that?
He's an amazing guy.
Yes.
Yes, we can see that.
Awesome. All right, so I think most of you know who I am. I'm Alex Taylor. I do stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm talking basically about, well, the idea for this presentation came up, I will be frank, at an Arca Noae staff meeting when we were going through tickets, and we noticed some, shall we say, trends in some difficulties that people were having when installing ArcaOS. So I thought, you know, we've never really done a presentation on how do you troubleshoot the installation process effectively. So ArcaOS 5.1 may be the most smoothly installing version of OS2 ever. That doesn't mean it's impossible to run into installation problems. And so in the highly unlikely event that you do run into issues installing ArcaOS, it is useful to know what to do next. So what are your basic goals in troubleshooting? Basically, it's 4 simple steps. First of all, identify the problem. That's kind of key, which is to say, okay, for example, the installation aborted with an error message while it was installing network drivers. Okay, so once you've identified what the problem is, determine the cause of the problem. What caused the network driver install to abort? Then, now, this is kind of like a reverse onion. A lot of people are probably equipped to identify a problem, not everybody. That's why we have support channels. I want to emphasize, by the way, none of this is meant to discourage you from opening a problem ticket when you do have problems. But I know a lot of users do like to make sort of some basic effort, or first steps at least try to get through if not all of these bullet points, maybe the first couple of them, because the more you know about where the problem happened and what the problem is, you know, it's possible you might be able to fix it yourself. Or if not, at the very least, you will have that additional context when you do reach out on Mantis or through other support channels. And I will talk a little bit about kind of best practices for opening tickets on Mantis a little at the end, because that does kind of overlap with this a bit. But for now, I'm just going to go through the basic steps that I recommend for basic install troubleshooting. So we've got to identify the problem. If you can determine the cause of the problem. And this one's going to be a bit harder than necessarily just identifying it. So probably fewer people are going to get to this point in the onion or the reverse funnel or whatever metaphor you want to use. So then the third bullet point is, once you've found the cause of the problem, can you correct it? Can you fix it? Or can you find a workaround that's acceptable? And again, probably fewer and fewer people are going to be able to get to this point. But if you can, great. And fourth, once you think you've corrected the problem, try again and see if the problem's gone. So that's a sort of generic approach to troubleshooting, and I don't think this is likely a revelation to most people here. Obviously, the devil's in the details, so I'm going to go into some of those details now. Before I dive into that, any sort of preliminary questions or requests, things to add here?
I just want to comment that, you know, I do a lot of consulting, and identifying the problem, it would be good to warn people that it doesn't work isn't a very good identification of the problem.
It's not?
Yeah.
But, warn people that, no, we need more than that.
Yeah, I agree. We have. Again, I'll probably touch on this more when I talk about opening tickets. I know David and I think Lewis have also in their day done sort of presentations on ticket and reporting best practices. So some of that's going to be reiteration. I will say yes, very much it doesn't work is not a useful report. Another thing that is not useful is to mix and match problem reports. Well, I tried this on this computer and this happened, so then I went to this other computer and tried it again and it failed in a different way. And I think they may be related, but just to make sure I tried it on a third computer and something totally different happened, please help. That's not a great way to get a coherent and useful response out of us, because it's not really a coherent and useful report.
I have a question. Since you're talking about installation problems, a typical thing I've experienced is, I put the USB stick in, it starts to boot up, and it'll sit there forever. And what exactly are you supposed to do in that situation, except it doesn't work? Are there any? Maybe
yeah,
you can talk about this, but
I'll be getting to that in a couple of slides.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there isn't usually an easy answer to that, but there are things that I would recommend doing, and one of those involves the wiki. But I believe that's in about 2 slides, so I'll defer that for now if you don't mind.
And are you going to talk about all that stuff like trusted platform module? There's some other things like security related stuff in BIOSes that can mess you up, I think.
Okay, so I'm not really going to get into specific problems here because there are other venues for that. The wiki is an excellent resource. There's a lot of known issues and steps for addressing common problems like that. There are steps recommending, like, you should make sure your BIOS is not configured this way, or you should try to configure your BIOS in this way if you have the option. These are the types of systems that are likely to succeed on. These are, maybe types of hardware that are less likely to give you good results. A lot of that is recommended before you even get a system. Obviously, that's not always an option if you have the system already in front of you and you're trying to install. There's also stuff, as I say, on the wiki about, you run into this problem, this is what you do. And also, none of what I'm saying here, again, is meant to sort of discourage you or replace the other support options, like opening a problem ticket. It may be necessary. What I really want to cover here today is general approaches, general techniques for problem solving the install. Because if we start going into specific error conditions, again, I'm duplicating a lot of what's on the wiki, and I would also be here for the whole weekend. So I hope that kind of answers that.
Yeah, sure, thanks.
Okay. So, general steps to troubleshooting an install problem. Step 1, take note of exactly what happened. So, again, this is more than just, I tried this and it didn't work. How didn't it work? So what was the exact error message you got, and when did it happen? Even if it's not an error message, the error condition. What happened that went wrong that should not have gone wrong? Try to be as specific as you can. Going back to my earlier example of something blew up when it was installing network drivers and protocols. A useful thing to take note of would be, okay, it said on the screen it was installing network drivers and protocols. Then I got an error message saying, the installation aborted with this error code, check the log files for details. So the next step would be to check the log files. If there's anything unusual about the circumstances that led to that error condition, also take note of those. For example, what network drivers or what network protocols did you have selected at the time? All of this is useful to you because it's going to help you investigate and drill down exactly what happened. But you will also want this information available if and when you have to open a ticket on the bug tracker, because that is information that will be useful to us in helping you solve it if you are not able to solve it on your own. By the way, is my audio okay? I can move my mic closer if I have to.
Really
You sound perfect.
Really good. Really good.
All right, great. So yeah, once you've taken note of these things, next up, check the ArcaOS documentation. There are quick start guides. There are READMEs right there that are provided. They're mostly still in English, as Lewis kind of noted yesterday, I believe, but some of them are translated in different languages, I believe, to varying extents. And besides the documentation that comes with ArcaOS, again, the Arca Noae wiki, there's a whole section on known issues. You have a problem, I recommend that's one of the first things you do is go in there and check, assuming you have internet access. I will grant you the wiki is not super easy to navigate. I think some of these pages, sorry Lewis, I was just on there the other day preparing for this, and I noticed, yeah, there's a lot of fantastic information in this known issues section. What it does not have is like a table of contents. So if I want to know what's in the known issues table, I have to basically read through the entire page. Maybe we can consider improving the navigation there, which is always an ongoing process. And I know we are dealing with a backend on the website, which is idiosyncratic in a number of ways and kind of confines some of what we can do.
That's a euphemism.
So once you've checked the documentation and you've checked the wiki, see if you can troubleshoot. And again, if you're not comfortable doing this yourself, maybe you're not a super technical user, there's nothing wrong with skipping step 4, going straight to step 5, and opening a problem report if necessary. But if you've done steps 1, 2, and 3, that will be very useful to you for step 5, opening a ticket, whether or not you also do step 4. So doing all of these things in order is going to help you, whatever you then choose to do with it. So, going back to that first point, when and where did the problem occur? So, there's 3 basic times or domains, I could say, in which problems can occur. There's problems when you're first booting from the installation media. Once upon a time, we would have said from the DVD. Now it's more likely to be a USB stick. If you can't boot the media at all, that is an entirely different category of problem than something going wrong during the install. So that would be the second category, which is something that happens during the install itself, during the graphical installation phases. We use terms like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Those all refer to the graphical part of the installer. Phase 0 is not really an official term, but you'll sometimes hear that used to refer to the actual booting of the installation media. So I'll cover both of those first 2 bullet points in the next slides. The third circumstance for troubleshooting errors is after installation, something happens. Obviously, this presentation is based on installation problems, so I'm not really going to cover that here. So that being said, let's move on to the next slide. So problems booting from the installation media. The first and most serious problem that can happen here is you can't even boot off it. You can't reach the pre-boot menu. Reaching the pre-boot menu, that little, select what you want to boot from, continue from hard disk, boot off stick, install or maintain ArcaOS. If you don't even get to that point, then something very basic needs to be fixed before you can proceed. So going back to the earlier question, yeah, maybe what do? You stick in the USB stick, you turn it on. It either sits there forever, or maybe the computer just doesn't even notice the stick and goes and boots whatever other operating system might already be on the computer, if any. This is where the wiki will really come in handy. Potential causes for this, and somebody like David could probably give you a better, more detailed list of causes, but broadly speaking, first things you probably want to look at, BIOS settings. does your computer have a CSM module? If so, turn it on. Conversely, if it is on and there's an option to turn it off, it might be worth trying turning it off and going full UEFI only. There are pros and cons to either approach, but if you can't get there one way, try getting there the other way. You don't generally lose anything by trying. Memory ranges. So there could be video memory that's configured in a way that's you're interfering with something. And again, David is probably cringing at my clumsy explanation and probably inaccurate, but there are settings related to video memory and other types of memory mapping in the BIOS sometimes that can help you get past these phase 0 problems. The other one is hardware problems. This can have many causes. Maybe, it could be something as simple as there's dust in your system, or the CPU's overheated, or you've got a bad RAM stick that just isn't helping, that's kind of causing problems. Maybe you've got a piece of hardware that's sitting, that's trying to occupy an address in memory that we need to install ArcaOS or to boot up the installation environment. Again, it's really difficult to kind of enumerate all the possible causes here. The wiki is probably your first thing to check. Next, if you can't get any further with that, just go ahead and open a ticket. We can often help you, or we can help you find solutions that can get you past this problem. And if we can't, well, at least you'll know that the situation has been looked at and you've got an answer. Maybe the answer is, unfortunately, this computer will not work. But in that case, at least you know, right? And hopefully that won't be the case. In many cases, we can get past these problems. So what I've been saying kind of covers all of the first two major bullet points on this slide. So there's can't reach the pre-boot menu. There's also, you can reach the pre-boot menu. You can start booting the minimal OS2 system that the installer runs in, but maybe it just can't get to Presentation Manager. And again, these can be caused by things like weird hardware, memory mapping problems. Sometimes you can get past these by replacing adapters or other things in your system, or reconfiguring the BIOS. Again, same list of things to try. Now, there is one common message that may pop up during this phase, and that is a message saying you need to insert the installation media. So at this point, you've got past the pre-boot menu, you've got past the boot logo. It starts loading the OS2 drivers, and then you get this message basically saying you need to insert the ArcaOS install disk or media. Now, this usually means that there's something amiss with your USB configuration. What this message actually means is when the BIOS tried, or when the operating system tried to take over control of the boot device from the BIOS, excuse me, it was unable to, or it was unable to find the boot device, or possibly it was unable to find it where it expected it. So usually this, as I say, indicates a USB driver configuration problem. It's usually solvable. I'm not sure I can say it's solvable with a sort of generic set of steps. This, again, probably would involve you opening a problem ticket, and then we can kind of figure out how to diagnose your system, find out what's confusing it, and how to fix it. Again, operating system initialization, maybe there's a driver that's having trouble with some of your hardware, or maybe you loaded a third-party driver off there's options to do that in the pre-boot menu that just doesn't play nice. Stuff like that can cause this too. Now, if you do have to open a problem ticket here, this is one of those cases where the first thing we're going to want in a problem ticket, after your basic description, this is what happened, this is when it happened, this is what I was doing when it happened. The first thing we're going to want after that is a test log. And obviously the question comes up, well, if I can't boot my system, how can I generate a test log? The pre-boot menu, if you go into it, there are several options that you can choose for what mode to boot in. There's the graphical install boot, which is the default. You can also boot to a command prompt maintenance environment. That can sometimes work if the problem was in the later phases of boot, just starting Presentation Manager specifically. Sometimes you can get to a command prompt and you can run commands sufficiently to generate a test log. Or there's another option in the pre-boot menu, which is automatically generate and upload a test log to the ArcaOS FTP server, which basically you just select that, hit enter, and it does it for you if it can get far enough in the boot process and if the network stack is able to initialize and get an IP address, which means you also have to be connected to a TCP/IP network. There's a lot of ifs there. This is not obviously going to work under all circumstances, but it's a common enough need that we put it in there, and I believe people do use it. Is that not right, Lewis?
Yeah. David is probably more familiar with the number of people who use it. But not too many, because we don't have too many situations where the system doesn't boot all the way. Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
useful thing I found is in the pre-boot stuff where you're filling out all those things.
Yeah.
If you turn on that thing that displays the drivers as they're being loaded, then you can see where it's hanging.
Sure.
I found that really useful sometimes.
Yes. Also, I should say one thing where that automatic upload of a pre-boot menu test log is useful is if your keyboard doesn't work.
Yes.
I think that was actually the original impetus behind it. Now that I recall, we had people whose system would boot, but there was no keyboard, so they couldn't run test log.
No mouse going into the installer.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
All right. So that kind of covers booting from the installation media. So the next section of problems is what happens when you get to the interactive installer, and you can actually go through it. You can start the installation process, and something goes wrong there. So again, we've got this terminology that you'll see us use: phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1 refers to, well, strictly speaking, it's everything that happens while you boot it off the install media. Generally speaking, we more commonly use it to refer to everything that happens between Presentation Manager starting up off the install media and the interactive install running up to the point of the first reboot. That's phase 1. If we say phase 0, we usually mean, and this is not an official term that I encourage, but I know people have used it. Phase 0, if it's used, generally refers to everything between sticking in the USB stick up to where the graphical installer screen loads. Then phase 2 is the first phase that the installer boots off your hard disk, or whatever drive you're installing to. So phase 1, you boot it off the install stick. It gets to a point, it tells you to reboot. At this point, it reboots off the hard disk and then continues. So that is phase 2. In a regular install, phase 2 is the last phase. In an update install, there is phase 3, 4, 5. Because during an update, just to the nature of what has to be done, it's going to be rebooting a number of other times. But basically, phase 1 means you boot it off the stick. Phase 2 or higher means you boot it off the hard disk. This is important. It matters when you're trying to diagnose what went wrong. It matters when you're reporting a problem. And it matters in how you approach certain aspects of troubleshooting, which I'll touch on later. So you get a problem during one of the graphical install phases. What kinds of problems do you have? Well, the one that you really don't want to see is when the install just stalls and appears to do nothing. You've got that progress indicator. It's that progress bar. It's running through the install, and it just sits there at one particular percentage, one particular progress message, and it just never continues. It doesn't come up with an error message, nothing obviously is wrong, it's just not doing anything. The first thing you want to do here is wait. There are some computers that can go through certain phases very slowly. There are some very large packages that can take a long time to install. If maybe you happen to boot up using a disk driver options that are not optimal for your system, you might end up with very slow I/O. That can cause things to take a long time. Sometimes there are certain installers which may need to probe hardware in some way. That can sometimes take a long time. So even if you don't necessarily see obvious disk activity, the system might still be doing something. That being said, if you've waited for half a day or longer and it has not progressed, at that point you could probably assume that it is stalled somehow. What would cause it to stall? Well, the way the install system works is basically it uses a technology that was designed by IBM called SID, Configuration Installation Distribution, which basically means headless automated installs. Like you script the install. That's what our installer does. It takes your selections, generates a series of scripts that it runs, and that script actually runs a bunch of individual product installers to install each individual product. So it'll run SEInst to install the base operating system. It will run MPTS to install the network drivers. It will run Warpin to install certain packages. It will run Yum or IPM to install certain packages. Some software have their own dedicated installers. Those will get run too. Now, as you can probably anticipate from the fact that we are running a lot of different installers, many of which were not written by us, it is possible that one of those installers might encounter a combination of circumstances that its SID install mode doesn't handle gracefully. And it might have tried to pop up an error message or a prompt or something saying, hey, I need you to make a decision here. Or I found an error, hit OK. The problem is, you don't see that as the user because we've got the installer, which assumes that everything is going to run in an automated mode, and it's supposed to if they're working properly. But in the off chance that something unexpected happened with one of these, especially third-party installers, and it's popped up a prompt or something, that's going to be hidden behind the installer screen, and you have no way of seeing it or getting at it. So it's basically sitting there waiting for your input, and you have no way to provide it. So that is the number one cause of a permanent stall in the graphical installer. What do you do when that happens? Well, basically, once you've concluded that it's stalled like this, all you can really do at that point, normally, is reboot. Three-finger salute, whatever. Then reboot off the installation media and go and check the install logs to see exactly where the stall happened. That'll tell you what to do next. And the next slide, I'll talk about how to look and read log files. There is. I hesitated a bit about whether to mention this, and it's not in the slides. There is a trick that you can use by modifying the installer command arguments in config.sys, which means you'd have to do the edit config.sys option in the preboot menu. There is a switch you can add to the installer which causes it to not run in shell mode. It runs in window mode and doesn't stay on top. If all else fails and you've tried a few times and the system just keeps stalling at this point, it can be worth trying that. Adding that switch, and if we have time, maybe I'll show you what it is, but that would allow you to actually see what's happening behind the covers, so to speak, during the install. And any prompts that come up, you will see them and you'll be able to respond to them. I don't know that this is something that normally happens to end users. It's happened to me because I'm a developer working on the install process itself. So when we were designing it, I had to deal with this situation just so that I could identify all of the cases where this might happen and hopefully engineer them out. So I'm hoping this isn't something that generally happens to end users. I think I've seen 1 or 2 problem reports where it has. Hopefully we've eliminated all of those causes by this point. But if not, that's how you deal with it, in broad strokes. So we've covered stalls. Next thing, crashes. And this means like the installer itself or something it's running actually crashes, as in like sys3175, pop-up log entry, whatever. Obviously this never happens because our software is robust, right, Lewis? But in theory, if it ever did happen, what you would do is, again, you'd reboot off the installation media and check the logs. Again, see next slide. Third one is probably the most likely of a set of unlikely scenarios, and that is you get an explicit error message and the installation aborts. What do you do with this? In this case, you generally don't need to reboot because you get that option to just say okay, and you'll get dumped into the sort of maintenance mode environment, and you can then open a command prompt and go and check the logs again. So I keep coming back to these logs. What exactly do I mean by the logs, and what and where are they? So the installer writes its log files to the var log directory on the drive that you are installing to. This is kind of a CID convention that question mark colon means the target install drive. So you look at this directory, you will see a very large number of log files. A larger number the further you got during the install. If something went wrong early in the install, you won't see so many. These are rather cryptically named, unfortunately. There is rhyme and reason to it. I have had some I've had some people observe that it seems pretty obscure what the actual names of these log files are, and they don't seem very indicative. The naming convention was basically inherited from, again, the IBM LCU CID system, because that's what we're using. We kind of decided to keep the naming conventions just to make things consistent with what's gone before, and people who aren't necessarily people who are familiar with that system are kind of going to know what to look for. So the files usually have an extension L1 or L2, occasionally L3, or very occasionally just log. So the extension indicates the type of log. So a .L1 file is a status or summary log file. It's what is sometimes called as the message log. An L2 log file is a detailed log or diagnostic log. You might also see it referred as the error log. That's a bit of a misnomer. It doesn't necessarily contain just errors, but it does usually contain more detail about the stuff that's happening. L1 is kind of an overview. Yeah, this is what I did in broad strokes. L2 is more like, okay, this is exactly what was happening. You may sometimes see L3. This is usually if the structure of the installer means that L1 and L2 were both already being created, but we needed to create another log for additional details. This is usually if we need to use like pipe redirection to dump the output of some commands that are being run between other installers. But L3 is basically the same as L2. It's just L2 was already taken. And some things will write a file with just .log. Those are usually either system functions or things, software that installs later, or in some cases, third-party tools that just want to use their own particular log name. Those usually aren't as critical to the installer itself. Now, as you can no doubt intuitively grasp, the master log file, the one you should always check first, is called lcu.l2. This completely intuitive and logical name is short for Lancet Utility, which is the name of the back-end that runs the entire install process. .L2, meaning it's a detail or diagnostic log. There is also an LCU.L1, which you can also look at, but if you want information about something that actually went wrong, the L2 log file, because it's the diagnostic log, is going to be the one that actually has the more useful information. So you run into a problem. This is, generally speaking, the first log file that you want to look at. This will usually tell you exactly where, well, this will almost certainly tell you where in the process the install ended, and it will usually tell you which specific installer failed. Once you know that, you can find the specific log file for that installer and look through those. I'm going to give a special mention to base OS errors. That's the very first major install program that runs. It's SEInst is the program that I think Lewis was singing the praises of yesterday. It's an IBM program that installs literally the base operating system, the base OS2 files. The log file for anything that went wrong with this particular component is called 1_baseOS.L1 and .L2. You can look at either one, but generally speaking, what you really want, and I think it's written to both of them, is depending on exactly what happened and when, it's either going to be near the top of the file or it's going to be near the bottom of the file. But you should, if SEInst crashed or errored out for some reason, you'll usually see a reference to the RSP_inst return code in this file. Whatever error code SEInst gave you and whatever error code you saw on the pop-up in the installer, if something went wrong with SEInst install, the real error code that you're going to need is the RSP_inst return code. These are documented in some semi-obscure IBM documents, but there's a whole list of these RSP_inst codes, and they get quite detailed. So if you can find the exact code, it'll usually tell you pretty much exactly what happened or what went wrong. It is not necessarily for the faint of heart, though. So particular errors to note. These are some things that we kind of see fairly often in bug reports, in problem tickets. So they deserve special mention because they tend to mean things that are non-obvious. If you get an error that says, I don't recall the exact wording. I was trying to see if I could reproduce it last night. I couldn't. But if you get an error, and I think this usually appears in one of the top-level log files rather than on the screen itself, but if it says that it is unable to update config.sys, or if it is unable to write to config.sys, what that usually actually means is that SEInst did not finish. It usually means that it can't write to config.sys because config.sys does not exist. And if config.sys does not exist, it means the base OS install didn't complete, which means something went wrong with SEInst, which means, again, you're probably going to want to check that 1_baseOS.L1 file. The next one, oh, this is my favorite, error 1604. I think, again, Lewis, you alluded to this yesterday. Yes, I did watch the stream, you can tell, right? So the 1604 error code. We do see problem tickets sometimes or posts on various forums saying, hey, I got error code 1604, what does this mean? What error code 1604 literally means is something went wrong. It's a bottom catcher. It's defined by the IBM SID system, and it means it's the miscellaneous error code. Basically means something went wrong, either I don't know what, or I'm not going to bother telling you what. By itself, it means nothing useful, except to say that, yeah, an error occurred. Thanks, I know. But again, this goes back to looking at the log files, looking to see what product, what piece of the installer actually kicked this up. Once you know that, you can hopefully find the actual log file for the specific installer that was running when this error occurred, and that log file will in many cases tell you what actually went wrong. Again, in the case of SEInst, you're going to be looking for the RSP inst error code in 1baseOS.L1. The third one that I kind of want to mention is an error installing Warpin, usually right near the beginning of phase 2. There have been occasional problem reports where the apparent error is that Warpin is trying to install and says it's, I think it usually says it's unable to read the package file. The first few times we saw this, we were scratching our heads a bit. So it's like, why would Warpin be not able to read the package file if it's not saying anything else? Until it kind of clicked. Warpin is the first installer that actually runs after you have first rebooted from hard disk. What this error actually means is that this is the first thing that ran after you rebooted that is specifically trying to read off the install media. It's trying to read a package off the install media. It can't read it, probably because it can't find it, probably because the install media did not get loaded when you booted off the hard disk, or if it did get loaded, it got remapped to a different drive letter than the system expects it to be on. So there isn't necessarily a generic solution to this other than just figuring out why the install media is not being found. If you can answer that, you can usually figure out what to do about it. Just understand that if you see this message, this error, right after installing, right after rebooting into phase 2 or any subsequent phase, it generally means that it can't read the ISO file, the ArcaOS install files off the USB stick or the DVD if you're using one of those. All right, resuming installations. So you had a problem. The install ended, it aborted with an error message. You thought, okay, I can deal with this. Let's see what happened. You went into a command prompt. You did all of those things that I've been talking about. You looked at the log files. You figured out what the problem was. You're a very smart person. You were able to fix the problem. What do you do now? Well, there is actually a way to resume an interrupted installation at the point where it stopped. Now, generally, this only works if the error condition that caused it to stop has been fixed. If you haven't fixed the error, then trying to resume it is probably just going to dump you back into the same error, right? However, if you've found, isolated, and fixed the problem, you can generally just resume the install from the point where it stopped. If you are in phase 1, I should actually verify the correctness of that. We'll look at that later. But there is a command that's created on the target install drive, and this does depend on what phase of how far you got into the install. But if you got through the install up to a certain point, at least, then if you go to the directory sysinstall on the target install drive and run the command resume, it will pick up the install where it left off. You can also do this in phase 2. However, probably a simpler thing to do in phase 2 is simply reboot, because it'll then do a resume automatically from the same point. Phase 1, I was writing this last night, so I didn't specifically verify that phase 1 thing. So put a caveat on that note about phase 1, because I haven't double-checked that. It definitely works in phase 2. But we'll find out shortly, because hopefully, because I'm going to try and actually go through this process with you. All right. So obviously, not everybody's going to be able to get through all of these solutions, all of these steps. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe this is a bit beyond you. That's fine. Again, the bug tracker is there. The wiki is there. And they are there precisely to help people, or help us help people. So again, as I've said several times, the Arca Noae wiki has a lot of information, can sometimes be a bit tricky to find. Generally, the section that you want is the known issues section. Just read through that if you run into a problem. That's going to be your first place to look. If you need to ask us for support, and don't hesitate to do so if you need it, there is the bug tracker, mantis.arcanoae.com. When you open a ticket, please read the best practices before you open a ticket. I know everybody clicks that checkbox. Sometimes we get tickets where people click that checkbox saying, yes, I read and agree to the best practices, and we read the ticket and we're thinking, did you really? But the best practices are there for a reason. They are there not just to be a bureaucratic hurdle. They are there to help you open an effective report that gives us the tools to help you. So for problems installing, somehow lost the word there, but for problems in installing, we are going to want you to obtain, if possible, and attach the installation support bundle. That is a zip file that the installer creates. It is created after the end of successful install, in which case it will have the name install_year-month-day.zip. Or if the install aborted partway through and it wasn't an outright crash, which again never happens, it will be called install_aben.zip. And I think I was about 3 or 4 years, or possibly even longer, into my career seeing this term abend before I eventually realized that it stands for abnormal end. I was kind of like, why are people talking about bending? Does that mean it curved off in the wrong direction? I don't know. But yeah, install_aben.zip is probably more likely if you've encountered a problem during install. Whichever one is there, please get it if you can and attach it to the ticket. If your system is in such a state that you have no way of getting to that file, I mean, yeah, okay, it happens. Just explain that in the ticket. The first thing we will probably do is try and help you get that file, because without that file, we are very limited in what we can do to support you. If what you got was a trap screen, a photo of the trap screen is also called for. Please don't take a 20 megapixel photo and then just upload it as is, especially not in RAW format. You're going to attach a picture. Try to take it in as low resolution as you can and still be legible. If you have access to simple image editing like PM View or something else, maybe shrink it down a bit, crop it, convert it to grayscale if you can. These all help keep the file size down, which makes everybody's life easier. Also, be prepared to provide a test log on request. Now, I wanna emphasize something here. If you are opening a problem ticket for anything which is not specifically an install problem, and it is not something that happened during the install phase 1, 2, or 3, or whatever, in the case of, depending on whether it's an install or an update. If it is not a problem like that, then we do ask that you provide a test log right from the start when you open the ticket. However, for these installer problems, if you got to the graphical phase of the install and you were able to start the install and something went wrong then, in that case, we need the installation support bundle first and foremost. We may also ask for a test log, but you can hold off on that until we ask for one. All other tickets, please provide a test log right from the start, if you can. Also, when you open a ticket, one other thing that I didn't put here, this is mentioned in the wiki and in the best practices. I will reiterate it here. Screenshots are not generally helpful. If you have no other way of capturing the specific error pop-up, we may forgive a cropped screenshot of the actual error dialog. Like large screenshots, full screen screenshots, screenshots of everything under the sun. If we need them, we'll ask for them. And if we ask for them, please convert them to a relatively compact file. Don't put 20 meg ping files in Word documents and upload a Word document or something like that. don't upload like BMP screenshots of a 4K HD screen. It's a headache for you. Doesn't really help us. So just thought I'd put that out there for the sake of everybody involved. Finally, when you open a ticket, this may seem like a no-brainer, but monitor the ticket, please. We may ask you questions. Be prepared to answer those questions to the best of your ability. We may ask you to do things or try things or take particular actions. Be prepared to do so. It's frustrating for everybody when somebody opens a ticket saying, I have a super urgent problem, I need help, it's an emergency, and we say, okay, please try this, or please give us this further information, and we just get tumbleweeds. I don't think, in most cases, whatever your emergency situation in terms of installing ArcaOS is so emergency that you're literally going to fall off the face of the earth if you don't receive help in 5 minutes, like one of those jokes where you get the message in the candy wrapper from the factory. But that's not likely to be the case here, so please continue to monitor your tickets. We will often ask you for more information. Please be prepared to provide it because, again, you help us help you. We don't just ask questions because we're trying to pass the buck or avoid helping you or because we're lazy or whatever. No, we ask questions because we actually need the answers to continue to help you. So please be responsive. Please don't just kind of ghost us on tickets if you can.
When you update
So,
a ticket, does it generate an email to let you know that happened, or you just have to go look all the time?
It depends on what our role is. It depends on how the ticket is assigned or not assigned. It depends on a number of factors. We can also, individuals among us can configure the system differently to notify us under certain circumstances or not. I think generally speaking, the people who respond most and first do get notifications when actually, yeah, no, I do get emails when certain tickets come in. I'm not sure if I get them in all categories of tickets, but problem tickets generally will generate emails. There are a few different categories of tickets, like feature requests and so on are a different type, and I don't know if they all send notifications the same way. Lewis would be able to answer that better.
But what about in our direction? If you put a question in a ticket, do we get an email?
Yes.
We do? Okay. I think I remember that happened. Okay.
You should. There's it may depend on how the response is done, because there's like a distinction in Mantis about replying to a ticket or requesting feedback on a ticket, and I don't know if they both send notifications the same way. But if you're not receiving a notification, I'd say let us know, but I mean, if you're not receiving a notification, how would you know? But anyway, generally speaking, yes, you will receive a notification if somebody is updating a ticket that you open. If, however, somebody updates a ticket that you did not open, but that you have jumped in on, please don't do that, by the way, then you will not receive the notification because only the person who opened the ticket receives the notifications.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question about alternative routes to the log files. I've occasionally run into problems where what went wrong is not visible to me. One of the things I find that helps is I pop the drive in a drive tray and then I access it from some other, whatever operating system is running in that machine. Can you tell us about alternative ways to access these log and zip files using physical mechanisms rather than the software, the install media, or the bare bones operating system on the failed install machine?
You mean from like Windows or Linux or something else?
You have visibility if the drive structure is still there. There are various ways you can look at the files and just copy them over to the operating system that's running from a hard drive in a drive tray.
We don't have any automated tools for doing that. I mean, there's obviously ways that you can do it, especially with the technical savvy. At least I don't think we've ever really looked at tools for automating that. Generally speaking, we assume that if you can boot the install media to get to the point where you actually have log files, you can do so again to get the files. Now, that does bring up the issue of, can you actually copy the files to somewhere useful from there? Which I guess, I mean, generally speaking, if all else fails, you can simply copy them to the USB install stick.
Yeah, excuse me, I wasn't talking about an automated mechanism. I'm just talking about putting the hard drive from the machine that had the failed install into another machine's drive tray, and just opening the whatever Explorer tool you have on that OS, and going to the file and just copying it over.
Well,
And then that becomes the file you could submit to Mantis.
Okay, well,
I mean, yeah, if you have the ability to do that, certainly.
yeah, the only caveat I should probably note is if you're installing, to a JFS partition, you're kind of limited. You can't just say stuff it in a Windows machine and expect it to
Same
recognize the
thing with
partition.
HPFS.
Yeah, that too.
So you need to have access to the file system.
Yeah, but it's, so you, if you have a ArcaOS machine running,
Yeah, you can put it into another ArcaOS machine
And
very
call it in,
easily,
so I
read
think-
it, yes.
that I think, I recommend should be included in the presentation. There's not a hopeless situation. It'll make it a lot easier for the people who handle the, Mantis reports
Well,
to get.
well, you're
Fine.
correct about that, but anybody that has that hardware and capable, the capability of doing that, probably
knows.
already knows
Yeah.
to do that. That's really,
We've had to do that a couple times.
right, because that requires, hardware exchanges then.
Well, just a drive tray. I always get drive trays for my machines.
Well, yes, you do.
A lot of the newer machines have internal drives that aren't removable to put into trays, or solid state disks, which are actually just a memory stick.
Yeah, they fit in the drive tray.
It doesn't go in the
No,
drive
they're-
tray.
You can get world
Like
equivalent.
NVMe.
So go to a motherboard or something,
The little
like a
M2
socket.
There are machines without removable drive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They exist.
Oh, yeah.
yes,
Uh,
and
this is a
they're
good
quite
example.
common today.
Yeah, and my laptop is one too. This one is all on board, it's soldered, there's nothing that you can take.
What did they
out.
solder
Sounds
in?
like a very bad
Solid,
design.
yeah.
Really?
Cheaper that way.
Don't
Yeah.
buy it.
Disposable systems. That's why you don't have replaceable batteries in cell phones anymore.
Kind of depressing, honestly,
You
but,
buy it and throw it away, right? Yeah, the new American culture, buy it and throw it away.
Yeah.
yeah, too consumerist. We need.
Or buy it and you don't own it, which is kind of the new thing.
Yeah, right. I do not agree to these terms and conditions. Where do I? Please.
So I'm gonna try and run through an install here, and I'm gonna see if I can break it so that it aborts partway through, so that I can show you some of what I've been talking about. Now, I was able to kind of test this early this morning, so hopefully the demo effect won't prevent me from doing it again. So again, this is phase one, the interactive installer. I'll just keep things at their defaults for the most part. Just to keep things quick, I think I'll turn off a few of the larger optional packages. No, that's fine. Turn off. Yeah, all right. Okay. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do here is deliberately mess up my network configuration. I mean, messing around with network stuff is a great way to get into trouble, right, Liz? Okay, I'll change one of my NICs to something that's completely not present. Oh, what the hell, I'll add NetBIOS over TCP/IP as well, why not? And see if that can break the system.
Is the recommended way to experience
No comment.
Half an OS, half an installer.
Nothing up my sleeve.
Used to be, definitely used to be.
By the way, you see these messages right here that scroll past? These messages are verbatim what is stored in the lcu.l1 log file. So if you ever want to review these particular messages, that's where they are, and I can show you that in a second.
You can scroll them up too.
Yep.
Yes, you can.
Not up.
And in fact, on really large resolutions, you can see more than one line.
Wow.
You know, Alex, would be really cool if there's a way for, like, kind of like a scrolling L2 log, you could just push a keystroke and get like a window that pops up that shows the more verbose stuff if you want. Like macOS has a feature like that if you install, if you need to see things like line by line, what it's doing to the system, you just hit a key
Okay.
combo, pulls up a
Or
like
just
a
use that
verbatim.
blank real estate above the.
Here we go.
Oh,
Okay. So this is not the. Yeah. So basically, you're thinking like add something here to say actually open the log files.
yeah. Mhm.
That's a thought. No, this is not the prettiest error dialogue in the world. I'm not entirely sure I'm a fan of this OK cancel thing. As far as I recall, cancel will actually reboot the system. So OK is what you want, which will.
We didn't write
What through the
that
system
part, we
actually?
inherited that part.
From IBM.
Yes.
Well, that's unfortunate.
I believe that's part of the install GUI.
Nobody's accusing.
Anyway,
No
um,
judging.
so.
Not accusing, but judging.
So I'm on drive S, which is my CD drive. I'm going to go to drive C, which is where I was installing, and I'm going to go to var log. Okay. So lcu.l1 is, like I said, those are the sort of basic messages. This is not the super useful one. So, okay, so here, this is what you would see. This is what you saw on the GUI. This does not provide a great deal of information, although it does tell you that MPTS product returns 1608. LC.L2 gives you more detail. In this case, it's probably not going to tell us much more. Okay, so we got to MPTS installs and starting, product returns 1608, unexpected condition, and then installation terminated abnormally on product 5 MPTS. Okay, so you'll notice that it created this sysinstall install event.zip file. That is the support file that you would want to send when you open a ticket. And the final return code is your dreaded 1604. Again, that just means something went wrong. Basically, look at the logs to find out what. There isn't really, because these are all separate self-contained installers, there isn't really a great way to kind of pass the, quote, real error code back up to the top level. At least none that's reliable that we found. So this is kind of what we have to do to dig into it. Anyway, we know where the error occurred. We installed MPTS while it was installing MPTS. We know what the error code was. It was unexpected condition 1608. And we know what we were doing, which is we were installing phase 1, doing a fresh install onto a new system. We also know that we had selected a bunch of sort of non-standard drivers and protocols. The logs will tell us that if you send the support bundle to a ticket. But to just dig into this problem, we would want to look at the MPTS log file. Now, you just kind of have to know the naming convention to know that, unfortunately. But the MPTS log files are 1 mpts.l1 and 2 mpts.l1. You'll notice that there are no prefixes higher than 1. That's because we're all in phase 1. We never got to phase 2. So again, 1 mpts.l1 and 1 mpts.l2. I'll check the L1 file first. While technically L2 is supposed to contain diagnostic messages, it's usually worth checking both. Okay. So here we see the actual message, a device equals statement invoking lsl.sys was not found. NW fixup did not complete successfully. an error code while attempting to update config.sys. Now, this is not the config.sys error message that I mentioned earlier, because this is a cascade off another error, which is one of these. Lewis, do you have any idea what these are? You're the network guy.
I can't read them.
Can you
from
make the
here,
font
so-
bigger,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
like giant?
yeah, like giant for us old people, you know, whippersnapper.
Oh, that's it. There we go.
All right. All right. Right, LSL, that's part of the NetWare client. So I don't think that we ship we don't ship LSL.sys on our installation media.
Right. In fact, I think, isn't there like a thing in the documentation somewhere that says if you select network, you have to provide some other files?
Yes, I think so. If it's not, I'll need to add that in there. I was going to say, add something in here about the selection of certain hardware that the system doesn't automatically detect. If you open a ticket for something like this, be prepared for the question to come back to you, why did you select that? And the answer should not be, because I'm planning to install it later. No, this is very important, because the ArcaOS installation assumes that the machine in its present state is the machine to which the software and drivers is to be installed, not to be installed and then activated at some point in the future.
Or dropped in a different machine?
If you add another network card to your system tomorrow, then you go through the post-install process of adding a network card. You do not anticipate adding that network card now and expect the system to behave normally when you're trying to make provision for something that does not yet exist. This is very important. People do this all the time.
What, is there a system, I have never encountered an OS where that approach will work.
I do not know of any system where that approach will work.
That's,
But a lot of times people see that list of network adapters and say, oh, I'm going to add in that other 3COM adapter that's shipping that I bought on Amazon. It ought to be here tomorrow, so I'll select that now. And then they wonder why I have no network connectivity. Well, you activated a card that doesn't exist. Yes, but I ordered it from Amazon. Yes, we can't activate it yet. It's still in the box, on the truck. It hasn't made it to your front door yet. But people do this sort of stuff. So, I mean, Alex and I know that we're kind of preaching to the choir in this room that, you guys don't make errors like this, but regular users do make errors like this. And
I have seen some tech people make some errors like this.
well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes people make assumptions. The point is, the installer is actually very robust in that it detects the hardware that you have, and it matches that hardware to the drivers that we ship. And when we don't ship the driver, we generally alert you to the fact that you need to supply that driver on supplementary media, like in the root of the USB stick.
I mean, other OSs, you don't even get the kind of choice.
Other OSs, you don't even get the choice.
You don't get this laundry list of drivers.
Exactly, you're pretty much stuck with whatever they decide to give you. On ArcaOS, we have several, particularly with network drivers, sometimes you have multiple choices of network drivers as to what driver to use for your hardware. We may pre-select the driver we believe is best, but that's not always the best. Sometimes you need to select an alternative driver. If you don't know that, then, that because you're new to the system, you're not familiar with it, that can happen. You can go back and add the other driver later on.
Put all three in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there just sidebar? Is there a technical reason why the LSL driver is not included? Is it a licensing thing, or you just keeping the media from getting too bloated?
There is a technical reason why we decided not to include the NetWare requester in the network installation. And that technical reason is escaping me at the moment.
Okay.
But all the parts of that stacked, ODI to NDI, LSL, SPX.sys, IPX.sys, are selectable, but you need to provide them on another stick. Actually, you know what the reason is? We did not have permission from Novell to include the NetWare requester in ArcaOS. And so if you select some of the protocols, it won't install without the rest of the requester stack being available. And IBM was granted that ability, but we were not clear that it would grandfather to us.
I see. Gotcha.
And getting an answer out of Novell proved difficult,
Wow.
even for me.
Is there a big base of Novell users? Besides yourself?
Besides myself, one of my enterprise consulting clients was a Novell and OS2 shop, and they transitioned off of both of them a couple of years ago.
RIP.
So I don't know what other, the problem with all of this, and I don't want to get too far afield from Alex's presentation here, but the problem is that both NetWare and OS2 are both systems that install and run as long as the hardware stays alive. They just keep going like that. So what happens is they were installed, they were put in a machine sitting in a rack somewhere. The guy who managed that system retired, and the system just runs. And the new guy who comes in just knows that box needs to be on over there. It just needs to be on. If it's off, then the machines don't work. So he presses the button, and then one day the machine doesn't come on. Then hopefully we get a phone call. We have a box in the rack, and I think that there's something on it called OS2, or I think there's something on it called NetWare. And who fixes that? But so, as far as how much NetWare and OS2 is out there, I really don't know at this point. Alex, please continue. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It's all good. So I am going to get a little ambitious and see if I can actually fix the problem from here. This is pretty expert level stuff, and I'm not even sure I'm up to it. But I'm going to see if I can actually hack the MPDS configuration file to remove the NetWare stuff. So I don't want these. I also don't want that second driver because it's not there anyway. I'm going to take out IPXNB, keep that, change that to adapter 0. TCP is only going to be bound to that one. Don't need this, don't need that. TCP buoy I can keep, but it's going to be the first instance.
Alex, for the net,
don't need 90. Sorry,
for the net buoy, should that be adapter 1 be changed to adapter 0, or it doesn't matter?
I don't recall off the top of my head whether. No, I don't think it matters. They don't need to. Okay. You can have one without 0. But yeah, okay. I seem to recall that you have to match the number here with the position of the NIF key in this list. Okay. The MPTS. This is just the DHCP and IP config. That may be it. We'll see if this works or if I'll embarrass myself in front of an audience of thousands.
Alex, I was going to say, check the frame type. Did I see a frame type parameter in there? Down toward the bottom? No, all right, I imagined it. You're good, you're good.
Okay, so I'm not sure if the resume is going to work at this point because it's going to be trying to reinstall MPTS over some files that are already there. Ideally, it should work, but we're going to see. So I'm in that sysinstall directory, and I'm going to see if this will work. This is the command resume. And if you look at what it's doing, you'll see it says, I'm not processing all of these items because they've already been done. And look, there you go. It's successfully installed MPDS. Now, what resume does not do is bring the GUI installer shell back. So it'll continue to run the back end of the install as it usually does. It just isn't going to be hidden from you. So you're actually going to see how the sausage is made doing this. Let me know if I should cut my screen off here, Lewis.
No, you're doing
Honestly,
fine.
Yeah.
this type of thing would be cool to invoke even during the
Yeah,
graphical
yeah.
part. I think this is really neat. I like seeing
Yeah.
the technical bits.
Yeah.
And there's a way to see this in a regular install as well, which I alluded to before. If we have time, I'll just quickly show you what you would do to turn that on. So there we go. It's finished phase 1 successfully. After I found the problem, fixed it, and resumed the install. So also resume, because you ran it from a command line manually, it does not automatically reboot. So I will do that now. Shut down.
Now that Alan
Yes.
let the cat out of the bag.
What I am going to do now quickly, before I boot off the hard disk, I just want to show you what I was mentioning in the pre-boot menu there. So if you turn on the edit config.sys before boot and search for install.exe, here we go. So this run workplace statement is what starts the graphical installer. If you add the switch /t immediately after that install.exe, escape, save changes, yes, and you will see a slight difference when the installer comes out.
Alex, I don't know if that trick works with a USB boot.
It should work. Oh, yeah, it calls the...
Kickoff command has that stuff hidden, and you can't edit kickoff command.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because it's on read-only media.
Interesting.
It should. Isn't there a way to pass parameters to kickoff? Not sure.
I have to double check.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the USB boot because, as you can see, I do most of my test installs in a VM because it's faster and I can just mount the ISO directly. So I'm essentially simulating CD, DVD boot. But you get up to the installer, but you can see the difference is this is now a window instead of a full screen shell. So I can actually minimize it and you can see everything that's running behind. If you actually run the install, you will actually see all of those windows running and popping up and going through as it goes, because when the window's in this mode, it's not forced to always on top. What this means is that if there is something like a prompt or something that shouldn't be there that blocks the install, you can actually see it and respond to it. So again, probably should check to see if you can actually do this on a USB boot. So there's that. But certainly on a DVD boot, I used this a number of times when we were doing development before we ironed out most of the issues with
Kickoff
pop-up
command
spot.
does accept the /t parameter.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I had to look at it again to refresh my
All
recollection.
right.
That's good.
So you need to edit the line in if you boot from USB stick, you need to find the kickoff .cmd line and just append a /t
No,
to that.
nice.
Um,
Like verbose
yeah.
instance.
Good.
What is it?
So, yeah, sorry, I'll just,
Window mode. It's
Oh.
/t stands for test,
Okay.
and it was something we put in during development early on.
I think we kept it.
It just sort of, it hung around by default because it was more trouble to take it out than to just leave it there and ignore it.
now, I will say, that's only good for phase 1. If you want that /t to be in effect in phase 2, you're going to have to edit the config.sys on the hard disk at the end of phase 1 and put it in there as well.
Good to know.
Or actually, is it startup.cmd? Might be that, but one of them. Anyway, you're more often to run into problems like that during.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
startup in phase 2.
Yeah. So it's just running through the install now. There isn't really any need to let this finish. It's a pretty bog standard install. So at that point, I think I can open it up to questions.
You know, this might be a stupid question.
The only stupid questions are the ones that don't get asked, and that is, honest to God, that's the truth.
Okay, all right, well, then here's my question. So, is there a technical reason why we have .cmds over .bats? Is there a reason for that?
Yes, there is a reason for that.
Those are DOS.
.bat is specifically for DOS, and it will trigger the VDM functionality in the interpreter,
Got
so
it,
that
okay.
it fires up a DOS session.
Okay.
CMD can be a Rex file too.
CMD can be a Rex file. CMD is also, if you notice on Windows, if you work at a command,
It's also there.
it will recognize either CMD or BAT.
Right. I knew that from Windows 2000, but I wasn't sure if it had a technical difference.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
I still got a Windows 2000 machine running.
I have a virtual Windows 2000 server running for one application that refuses to run under a virtual XP or newer
Really?
Windows system. Yes.
For taxes?
No, not for taxes. Not for taxes.
That's all DOS stuff.
Hey, Louis, I'll raise you. We've got a Windows 2000 server running on a card inside an AS400.
Excellent.
Right? That thing's only
That'll
enough to
keep it
drink,
locked up.
and it's gonna run forever. It's gonna outlive me.
Listen, one of our larger consulting clients said to us, "Oh, you guys work with OS2. We've got a few NT4 systems still running. Is there something you can do for us?" I said, "We
Yes,
don't
replace
do
it with Arca.
we don't do old software. We're OS2 consultants.
Yeah.
You know, just don't throw all of your old stuff at us. I mean,
That's everywhere, isn't it?
oh, you do OS2. I've got some CPM. Can you take a look at this for me?"
Yeah, that's that.
CPN.
SEO Unix.
Hey, we've
Santa
got-
Cruz
We
operations.
got Skull running too.
You kidding me?
No,
Santa
we got
Cruz.
Skull boxes too.
Wow.
How big's your business?
Oh, that's the hobby stuff.
What's it powered?
Stuff.
I think it's mostly powered by lawyers, right?
The remains of dead lawyers, but yeah.
Oh.
Right.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
they're still out there. It's called
Hey,
Zimos,
Alex,
Z-I-N.
you got the IRC up?
Unix,
Uh,
OS.
I do. I'm checking it occasionally.
You can still buy a license.
Oh, all
Open
right.
Server 7, Open Server 6.
Yeah. Jeez. Get out of here.
Can't find a compelling reason to do so, but it's out there.
I'm anxious to get to Demetrius.
An issue with the microphone setup there, is that?
Well, up above,
No,
up earlier, there was Sandra had some,
Yeah, I saw that actually. Oh yeah, she had the issue. I assume she's referring to the warp-in not finding the optical drive. We have actually discussed this issue. I think the ticket that I mentioned that we were talking about that kind of kicked off the idea for this presentation, it might have actually been the same issue where the CD for some reason wasn't accessible for an inordinately long time after the system booted. We've sort of talked about what a feasible approach might be for maybe adding like a retry wait to that phase. We hadn't actually concluded what the best approach for that is yet, as far as I recall. But yeah, it is something we have been looking at. Okay, and here you see ArcaOS is now fully installed. Just for fun, I will so I've got a doubled up mouse pointer here, trying to keep track of which is the real one and which is the screen shared one. Okay, so now you see the whole set of log files where you've got the 1 underscore and the 2 underscore, and ones which don't have a prefix, like install.log. These are ones that are written to by multiple phases, and this is install.log is, as you can see, the most detailed and critical log file of all of them. But lcu.l2, which is what I describe it as the master log file. Let's see if I can increase the font size for you a bit. So you will still see the original failure here, so where it failed there, but then I restarted it about 15 minutes later, and then it goes through the whole thing, and you can, I don't know if you can read this, but there are no further error messages or warning conditions logged, and it comes back with a final return code 0, the installation completed successfully, which is exactly what I want to see. So that was a successful diagnosis, recovery, resumption of an admittedly artificially created installation abort.
Alex, you want to show everyone where the install zip is located, please?
Yeah, that I believe is in sysinstall, isn't it? Let's
Yep.
see, sys
What's that?
install.
That's the zip of all of those log files. So if you open a ticket because you've got an installation failure, we're going to ask you to upload the installation log files. That's the zip. Please don't go into your log directory and just zip every blasted thing that's in there.
Okay.
That'll get too.
I had no intention.
Sometimes people will say, well, I had a problem with this, that, or the other, and it's 3 months after the install or something. They say, here are my install files, my install log files, and there have been 25 other things that have installed in the log directory is huge. So the zip is completely bloated. This is the zip that you want.
And where is that?
It's in sysinstall.
Sysinstall.
Right. You'll be able to tell which one it is. It's the zip file that says install on it. Install underscore the date.
Okay.
Okay, that I was trying to increase my window size, but that really did not play well with my multiple monitor setup here. But yeah, here's the sysinstall directory. You probably can't read this, the font size is tiny, but you've got the original install underscore append.zip, which was created at the original crash, and it has, which one, that one, and it also has the install underscore 2025.1108.zip, which is the one from the full successful install. So generally speaking, it's if you need to attach one, an install bundle and there's more than one, you want to attach the one with the most recently modified file stamp on it. And this just has a bunch of stuff in it. It's got the installation flag file, it's got config.sys, and it's got zip files of a bunch of logs and response files that tell us, hopefully, everything we need to know about what happened during the install, as well as what options were selected. And that's pretty much that, I think.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and here endeth the lesson.
Go Canada, by the way.
Thanks. It's a bit late to say go Blue Jays, but
I'm sorry about your Blue Jays. I really am.
that was a fantastic World Series. Like, seriously, it was
very, very riveting to the very end. But
Yeah.
I'm a Mariners fan, so no.
Be quiet.
don't worry.
I won't respond to that.
So you won't be visiting for 3 more years, is that right?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Unless we can throw the bum out.
Light is already gone.
I'm going to refrain from political commentary.
All right, good.
Okay, so next is
Dimitri?
Anyway, I'm going to bring off. Bye, guys.
All right, take it easy.
I was watching the stream. See ya.